Now, everything is sort of in place, I guess. But it's still missing some personality. It's pretty dead. She's pretty dead. There's nothing in there. So it's again the constant struggle of trying to getting the subtlety of a woman into the sculpt, but also adding some character to the sculpt. That's the main focus of this video.
So important to get the character right. Otherwise, why are you doing it? If you're not trying to get an emotion across or something like that.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, you're doing a purely technical study. But if you're doing it more as a portfolio piece, I think is so important to get character into the model.
Yeah, here's one of the things we talked about earlier. Getting rid of the excess skin and fat below the lip, because that can tend to produce a more masculine result. Even though, there's an actor like Jennifer Lawrence, she's quite pronounced underneath her lip there. Obviously, she still looks feminine, but that's because other parts of her make up for that. Whereas with this sculpt, because it doesn't have the soft jaw like Jennifer Lawrence has, she's quite soft there. Because it's more masculine there, too many masculine features together tend to make it a little more androgynous and less feminine. But again, like I said, the struggle throughout this sculpt has been the mouth. Like, I was never decided on a mouth. I could never... Well, in the end, I find a mouth that I like. But it took me a while to get to the mouth that I was satisfied with. So you'll have that on every sculpt. Sometimes you'll just have features where you think, okay, this just works. This first time and it works. Other parts just take, it's trial and error. Sometimes you have to experiment a little with it. Which mouth do I like? Which mouth do I not like?
Imagine you could do this in real life as well to yourself. There was a bit too much fat on my jaw.
Korea, man.
I guess, yeah, you can. But, I forgot that money was a thing.
So here I'm looking at my references to figure out how pronounced do I want the nasal labial fold to be, and how do I want to have that play between the skin between just the top of the mouth or the top lip and then up to the nasal labial fold. How do I want those to sort of interact? Because you can add, it's like with anyone, if you add more detail in those areas right here, then you're going to start to age them a lot more. Like, the more pronounced the difference between the shapes get, the older they're going to look, basically. Another thing that I found while sculpting this, you can see the angle here of the nasal labial fold. It is like maybe 45 degrees. So I found that in a man and in older people, you can change the look quite a lot by making that angle more vertical. So it's more straight up and down. But by making it more horizontal, you get a cuter, more childlike look. So a child's nasal labial fold, if it even exists, but if you sort of like pinch their cheeks, would probably be, instead of being 45 degrees down, it might be like 20 degrees from horizontal instead. Kind of looks like Cillian Murphy a little bit from here. It's weird.
He has a very feminine face.
He does actually.
If you were to give him a wig and some makeup, he would probably look pretty fine.
I mean, right now it could be like Cillian Murphy's sister-ish, maybe?
Yeah, same with Eddie Raymond as well.
We
pronounce him. Like, very, very feminine traits.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like a gradient between like Arnold Schwarzenegger, which is just everything.
Man.
Yeah, like everything is taken to like 11. And then just the opposite as well. And then you have women, which can look a bit masculine as well. Like Sigourney Weaver can have put her in a suit and she's going to look pretty strong.
Here was, I got some feedback from my girlfriend regarding the eyebrows, was to make them a little more bitchy. So you have that, like I don't know, maybe if you Google bitchy eyebrows, you'll probably find it. But
I have no idea what that means.
So it's like, it's flat in from the start, close to the glabella, and then it sort of ends in a peak right between the shift from the front of the skull to the side of the skull, and it sort of like bends down
so a bit more angry.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's like, but not angry, just a little bitchy, but only a little bit.
So between angry and playful.
Yeah, exactly. So, and by having some like personally for me, I didn't feel like a pencil brow would be appropriate for this. I wanted something that was a little thicker, so that again changes the look of your sculpt as well. If it was just like a little thin brow, that has one look, and you can experiment with that. But with the thicker look or the thicker brow, it's easier to convey emotion, I feel like. Because then you need to do less to the brow to make it express an emotion.
Brows are also so important. It's like if you look at all the Disney movies, even when they're doing like a fish or whatever, everything has eyebrows. A fish, a deer, a horse. Of course it has eyebrows, because it's important if you want
fish, you know. Fish have eyebrows.
Yeah, clearly. How else would it protect sweat from going into his eyes?
This little part here, I love that part. It's just a little bit. You can see right now, I think it's just between, it's right in the age that I wanted it to be. If you add a little more contrast between that little puffiness from the lip up to the nasolabial fold, you'll make her a little older.
Yeah, it's also like she seems like she's like early 20s. There's not a lot of weight on her skin, but all the proportions are definitely there. And
yeah. So I think throughout the last couple chapters, when we get to there, she ages a little bit more. So maybe she's like late 20s at that point. But it's a lot easier to age someone when you have your basis established, because then you can always just exaggerate those forms.
Yeah. Yeah, in the other tutorial we'll be talking about, which is coming out in a bit, where I'm sculpting older people, because I think that's also interesting. If you can sculpt older people, then you can sculpt young people, kind of, because then you can just reduce features.
Yeah.
So if you can, same here as well. If you have a young person, you just make the skin heavier, and you basically have an old person. And if you have an old person and you just reduce the complexity, you have a young person. And that's it. No more complexity than that whatsoever.
That's all you need. Those two tutorials, and you're done.
Then you can sculpt any gender, any age.
One thing I also want to be careful of here is adding too much definition to the nostril. So again, that that should be your mantra when you're sculpting a woman. Is okay, how defined is this? Maybe I should make it, 20% less defined.
Yeah.
That's probably like a good way to go about it. So this is the part where I was talking about convexity, just above the lip there. It's subtle, but it's nice to add. It just adds that extra bit of realism.
This is also why I prefer to use scans instead of photos, because photos are so deceptive. First off, you have the lighting, you have the shading and all that kind of stuff, but then you have the makeup and all that. And like if you use something like contouring and shadowing, highlighting and stuff on your body, your mind just goes crazy and you can't really see what's going on there. So if you want an honest view for what's going on, because makeup could compensate for so many of these little things, so many of the little imperfections.
Yeah, I mean, you see that with makeup videos of girls like doing transformation makeups.
Oh yeah.
It's quite drastic what you can do with your face, and you're not even because you're not changing your face. All you're doing is you're giving the illusion of highlights and shadows, and that alone is enough to make you perceive the face as being different.
You can see here that what's being added is just more definition in the skull, and when Morten is adding this, it's not like a blurry, non-defined, ambiguous shape. It's a clearly defined shape. It's just that it's kind of like you'd make it super sharp, and then you take the opacity down to like 10% of it.
Yeah,
it's still a very clear shape, which is there for a very good reason. It's just very subtle.
Yeah. Some people will have their cheekbone. This woman here is quite soft. The transition is soft from the cheekbone up to the eye, but some people actually have almost like a plane change where the cheekbone sticks out so far that you actually have like this ring around the cheekbone right under the eye. This happens in both men and women. I noticed that when I was watching Star Trek at one point.
But see, that's why it's interesting, right? Because the moment you start noticing these things in real life and in movies and all that, your sculpting improves so much from that. I'm not saying sculpting improves from watching Star Trek, but the sculpting improves from observing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how crazy is that? I always assume that your sculpting gets better from sculpting, but it turns out that kind of like your sculpting skills is almost like a byproduct of your observational skills.
Yeah, 100%.
Sure, there is definitely some stuff to it where, you got to learn the tools and got to learn techniques and all that. But for me personally, to get better at sculpting now, if I were to just sculpt 100 new busts, that would make me better because I would observe more. But what would make me better is the observational part of it.
Yeah.
Because you reach a point where you just master the tools. Like we use tube brushes. It doesn't take that long to get a good grasp of how they work.
Yeah. People are always interested and they always ask. So for this tutorial, it was clay buildup and move.
A lot of smooth.
Damien standard.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That's literally. Oh, I used the standard brush at some point, but that's about it.
Yeah. The majority of all my sculpting is done with move, pure move and clay buildup, and I could get away without using the move as well. If I had one slot in my brush, I could do literally everything with the clay buildup.
Yeah.
It would just take a bit longer, but you could do everything with that.
So here's a recap of the chapter. I'm sort of like going through, seeing how, here there's some more masculine features in there, trying to erase some of those away, just to see, what can I do, again, subtlety-wise, to enhance the feminine look.
Yeah.
Usually I'll use the standard brush for the wrinkles in the lips. That's a good use of it. I'll use it for the wrinkles in the eyes. And you'll see me using it for the hair when we get to that chapter as well.
I use a standard brush where I need definition.
Yeah.
Like lines around the mouth, the nose, eyes, specifically ears as well. Or small little things. If you're doing a little pimple or something like that, the standard brush is great for that.
Another really quick tip that I don't think we really touched on was these are sculptural eyes. And adding that little highlight in the eye that you see now is actually very beneficial.
Yeah, it is.
It takes your eyes from, she still looks a little bit dead, but, it takes the eyes from being completely dead to, there's a little bit of a soul in there now. That obviously gets better and better if you start to play with the expression. When you just have a deadpan like this, it's hard to implement a lot of expression.
Yeah, you get a little bit of resting bitchy face in it.
Yeah, you do.
You need, in order for this to really read, you just need to move the eyes a little bit, add a bit of a smirk, a bit of rotation to the head.
Yeah.
Just something.
And those are things that are so easy to add if all your forms and all your shapes sort of work together how they should work together,